We're continuing to follow the budget woes out of Multnomah County and its Homeless Services Department. Friday, County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson sounded the alarm, saying the department faces a budget shortfall of $104 million. She called it catastrophic. The reason? An expected reduction in the amount of supportive housing services tax dollars, or SHS funds, that come from regional government Metro. Vega Peterson warned that cuts needed to cover that gap could be in the neighborhood of 25% to homeless services. Ultimately, she says, it would result in more people on the streets. Late Friday, the Homeless Services Department published its requested budget for the upcoming fiscal year, detailing what some of those budget cuts could look like. I dove into that report today. Now, it's worth noting that this is the requested budget, so it's not set in stone, but it is an eye-opening report. This graph right here shows where Multnomah County's Homeless Services Department gets its money. You can see the majority of the money is represented in that bottom line there, $182 million, and that comes from the supportive housing services tax that we just talked about. And just under $60 million comes from the federal government, $45 million from the county's general fund, and $30 million from the city of Portland. On Friday, Chair Vega Peterson wrote a letter to the governor asking for $55 million more to close the county's $104 million gap. The governor's response was firm. She said she was not prepared to take a position on whether to send one more dollar to Multnomah County unless and until she gets clear answers as to why the county decided to make cuts to the Homeless Services Department in the first place. Here's what the governor had to say about that this afternoon.
I will be honest, I was dismayed by the approach that Multnomah County took. I know there's a budget deficit. I don't think it's appropriate to come out of the gate and ask for an amount of money, not only from the state, but from Metro without previous conversations. What I'm going to want to see from the county is very specific indications about what they are doing throughout their budget to prioritize homeless services in the county. They're going to have to make some hard decisions. It should not be incumbent upon the state to fill in all the gaps.
All right. And here's how Chair Vega Peterson responded to that earlier today.
I mean, I think anytime you are asked for a large amount of money, right, you want to understand why it's happening. For us, we found out really what the gap is for our homeless service department and the homeless services programs that we are providing. We had that final number, I think it was like on Valentine's Day. And so we wanted to make sure that we were raising awareness about the state we were in and really what the potential impacts were for our community, who has said time and time again that solving our homeless crisis is the #1 priority. So I'm meeting with the governor tomorrow. We're going to have a conversation about that. But, this is a critical budget time for Multnomah County.
Now back to those potential homeless services cuts, and the report shows 2 adult congregate shelters totaling 230 beds could close by the end of this fiscal year. County funding would also be canceled for some day centers, which is notable because Portland Mayor Keith Wilson's plan to end unsheltered homelessness hinges heavily on overnight congregate shelter beds and day centers. Other cuts include a mobile health program that provides hygiene to people living outside that would shut down. The county would no longer pay for about 200 unassigned permanent supportive housing units. All employment programs would be canceled, impacting hundreds of people who rely on the county for help with job placements and rent assistance. Navigation teams would be cut. Those are groups that help people access services. And funding for community law attorneys who help remove barriers so people can access permanent housing would also be cut. Canceling eviction mitigation programs and even a printed booklet that's handed out to the homeless and filled with numbers they can call for help, that would end too. The county would also cancel plans for some future shelters, including a 65-unit adult shelter. So things are not looking great for a homeless crisis that continues to grow. Now let's bring in live the director of Multnomah County's Homeless Services Department, Dan Field. Mr. Field, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Blair. Good to be here.
Okay, so you just heard that brief rundown of what the future of the Homeless Services Department could look like. From your perspective, how did we get here?
Yeah, if you break the supportive housing services measure into a couple of segments, the voters passed it in 2020, took effect in 2021. The first couple of years, as we all know, we were building up capacity across all three counties, and there was some underspending as we ramped those programs up and asked providers to step forward and build out things like new shelters, new supportive housing, and other new programs. So that was 21, 22, and 23, first 3 years of the measure. And then you shift into 24, 25, and now we're looking at 26. And we've begun to spend that carryover. And we're getting to a point now where we're going to have to move forward with existing annual revenues. So I think, again, in the beginning, you saw we underspent and built up some carryover. Last couple of years, we've been spending that carryover to meet the urgency of the moment in our community. And now we have to figure out the path forward.
So Chair Jessica Vega Peterson asked the governor for more money, about $55 million. And the governor's response was, I imagine, not as supportive as you all would have liked. What do you make of the governor's response?
I actually am pleased that the governor's engaging with us. The chair mentioned we have another meeting tomorrow. I think they talk multiple times a week. I think the governor has and will continue to be a very good partner along with the state legislature. So I'm not worried that we won't be able to reach an agreement with them about what an appropriate investment in Multnomah County looks like. We have 40% of the state's homeless population in Multnomah County, and it's our belief that the state investment of state tax dollars needs to reflect that. Right now, we get about 20% of the state's investment in homeless services, and we think that needs to be increased to reflect the fact that we're caring and serving up to 40% of the state's homeless population here in our county.
So back to the report. Another piece of this report shows that despite the $105 million gap, the county will keep a fully staffed equity team totaling about $1.5 million. So why won't that department face any cuts?
Well, the equity team is a very small part of our department, just 5 people, I believe, currently. And across our department, we're actually making some significant cuts. For a department that's about 120 people, we're cutting over 10 FTE, including 2 people from our executive team. So we're making some personnel cuts across the department. We're also making, unfortunately, tragically, some reductions in the equity program spending. So that department will definitely feel the pinch, along with all the other departments and teams within the Homeless Services Department.
So before I leave you, do you have any hope that this budget gap will be filled before it's too late?
Actually do. We're at the beginning of the process, Blair, as you cited in your report. Thank you for that. We have 4 months to go. And one of the things we did by moving with urgency, and I can tell we caught some people by surprise, but I'm okay with that. We're moving with urgency to let people know what the situation is. Part of what we need to do as a government is be as transparent and candid as possible, never hide the ball. So we insisted that we needed to come out early, describe the situation accurately to people, let them know what the gap is. And now we have 4 months to try and close that gap. I think, as we said, we'll engage with the governor tomorrow and in the weeks going forward and work to solve that gap. But we also need to work with our partners at Metro, the regional government that administers the SHS tax. Metro needs to step forward as well and acknowledge that Multnomah County is really bearing the brunt of this work, and the funds need to be allocated where the people are. We like to say the money needs to follow the people. The people are here in Multnomah County needing services. We're ready to serve them. We've demonstrated that we can get people sheltered. We've demonstrated that we can get people housed, and now we need the resources to continue doing that.
All right, I look forward to hearing how that conversation with the governor goes. Stanfield, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Blair.
Now, we often get emails from viewers who want to see homeless programs cut. Well, now it's your chance to weigh in, whether you agree or you think it'll make things worse. So send us your thoughts on potential cuts. Email us thestory@kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090.